while it's on the back burner.
TV camera, giant screen TV, get it now. You've got to...
Okay, so this is going to be a very rough run here. This setup is very fragile, and I'm hoping everything is working okay. Okay, so letting this stuff settle in, I've got someone in the background tell me if audio is coming through. In the meantime, Pseudo Pilled, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
I started a reading group 7 months ago,
I'm
and
sorry, I was having my audio setup wasn't correct. I had to. None of that was caught. That's my fault.
okay.
All right.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, like I said, this is all wires everywhere. I still use a filing cabinet, so if something burns down, it's going to be my mea culpa. But I think they should be able to hear you now. Give it another go.
All right. Well, my name is Pseudo.
Mhm.
Um, so I've been in the Dis and Right Discord community for about 2 years now. I started off in Clear Treads, and then ever since Dave made that video discussing the different leadership roles that we should be taking up, I decided to become a networker, and I've been doing that. I've been in different communities, Discord servers for a while now, interacting with the mod team, and I started a book club around 7 months ago. Um, reactionary reading, and it wasn't the most successful thing, but now I want to say 2 months ago we started up a new server because that server where I was running the reading groups got deleted. But yeah, I started this new server completely dedicated towards the reading group, and it's been going out pretty good.
Okay. I'm just waiting for
Yeah.
my fly on the wall to tell me if audio is coming through on your end. A little bit too loud. I can turn you down a little bit. Yeah, we were trying to get you turn it down a little bit. I might play around with that a little bit. So, anyways, okay, so that came through. I'm happy. A little bit too loud, but what can I say? Stuff's working.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we've actually known each other at least somewhat. We haven't talked, at least in any sort of long form dialogue, but we've known each other for like
Hmm.
about 2 years, all the way, like we said, back in the Clear Trad days. Old server no longer exists. And I want to make sure that I get this out of the way, so I'm not pinning you as something you're not. You would describe yourself as a Neoplatonist, a Platonist, something of that tune.
Classical Platonist,
Okay.
better. Yeah.
Right. Just making sure if that comes up, I don't, I'm not going to pin you as like I don't know, something weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've been running this network thing ever since what is it? Doing things in the background, so I wasn't fully present to what you were saying, but it was, I think, the clear video or what is it? I call it the archetype video or something like that.
Yeah, it was the archetype video, something like that. I mean, networking, definitely something I was interested in for a while, I guess, and I just started doing it.
Right. So why don't we start there? So how are you pulling that off right now, especially in the current situation? You're not a Girl Scout. You're not going and knocking up on doors, handing out pamphlets, are you?
No. This is purely online, and I'm in a geographical location where it's not really the best place to do stuff in real life. So I've been just taking advantage of the online stuff, and the quarantine. This is especially useful for the quarantine because we can't really do stuff offline. So I mean, the networking process, basically, you just go to different servers, you talk on there for a little bit. I don't think you need to talk a lot, like weeks, right? It could just be like a couple days. You interact generally with the community, and then if the people who are moderators are on the voice chats really are the easiest thing. It's something about the human voice that it just connects people a lot better. It's more natural, right? So that's definitely, I would suggest, if that's something you want to do, try and do stuff on voice. Just talk to the guys who are in some authority position, moderator, owner of server, content creators, if they exist in that server. And yeah, just be on friendly terms and, communicate with people, usually like, once a week, message something, small message, hey, how are you doing? Something like that. Maybe once every 2 weeks.
So your approach is a mixture of things that I'm actually familiar with that we get taught in undergrad psych. They teach you about the first year, and you start learning all the little business tricks. So you're doing this kind of foot in the door policy where it's just, if I can get in and talk to someone and be a face, and then also trying to, especially with voice, because I mean, if you're handing out like the in-person equivalent to this would be, here's a pamphlet, and where does it go? Right in the trash. If you're just handing out links and all that without having a face to it, it's worth a lot less. So your whole method is get in, establish a kind of rapport with at least some people in there, have some sort of familiarity, and then kind of propose the project.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you don't need to communicate with everyone in the hierarchy. If you're going to, like, for example, this one recent server, I had only communicated with one of the moderators. And then he had told me that the owner of that server was interested in doing some podcast stuff. And I mean, we could talk about the YouTube channel project, but that's something that I would be interested in, and I'd like to get people on board with that. So in the future, I already have information that, well, the owner of this server, because of my contact with the moderator, I know that guy exists, and since I know the moderator, meeting the owner, right? Reference right from the moderator. It's it's not like some just random just DMing him.
Yeah, so this actually allows us to segue a little bit into the next thing. So like, what's the upshot of this whole networking thing? And you're referencing this little YouTube project. So you're not just trying to get a Rolodex of names for the sake of having the names. You're trying to get them organized and getting them in communication to do something. So let's start with that YouTube project. That's like right in the queue of stuff you're doing, right? That's a new thing.
Yeah, for sure. Concrete projects we have is that YouTube project. Basically, what we want to be doing is making out a consistent production of book reviews. Why? Well, for the YouTube, I guess first a little bit of background. This project, I'm working with another smaller YouTuber who Dave had a conversation with on a small channel, Arvo. I've been in contact with him for a couple months now, and he wanted to go ahead with this. I had my own group of reading group, right? I mean, he did his own reading groups on his website forum, and I did mine on Discord. He had a Discord server. So I talked to him through there. We combined it now, so we have a whole bunch of different book clubs. We're using the traditional book club model, just assigned reading, discuss on a weekend or something. But then at the end of all that, we're gonna basically do book reviews. It could either be summaries or literal reviews, like debating the merits of the text itself. It's going to be multiple different topics, not just politics. We're going to do philosophy, science, psychology, self-improvement, history. We want to get as many different topics as possible. One, just for the algorithm. That's what YouTube wants. They want consistent output. Also, for the future, I don't just want this to be, let's just get people together in the community and let's teach people stuff. I want to also have this to build upon in the future. I would really like to get in contact with organizations that do classical education. And so I do want to have I would like to present them with the YouTube channel. And it's not just politics, it's, philosophy and other things, right? It's something varied, mixed. And, that's a long shot. That's something for the future. But, something more closer would be maybe, and this would be in the more political scene, getting in contact with online magazines like Jacobite or Palladium, I think that's how you pronounce it, to try and that's for the bigger, that's ultimately for that's using the YouTube book review channel as a jumping point for the networking project, which is a larger project that is, I'm the head, because the YouTube channel is for Arvel. He's the visionary on that. I'm doing the networking. If we could establish the YouTube channel as a base for, intellectual infrastructure, we could then, make contact with online magazines. I like to usually be conservative when I talk to people who are more influential than me. I just don't want to be some random guy on Discord. Hey, I do reading groups. Let me work with you, right? I'd like to have something established so that, a little bit of leverage, and hopefully that works out. And anything else for the specifics of I could explain the process of video production if you would like.
Yeah, sure. We can go there.
All right. So basically, like I said, traditional book club structure, the script is going to be created at the however the script is written. It's going to depend on the leader of each research group. Once the script is made, you give it to the script editor. That script editor does his job, gives it to a voice actor. Hopefully we could have one voice actor, because people just like consistency when they go on the YouTube channel, the same voice, right? It's not just about the ideas. But if we need two different voice actors, because we get a lot of videos pumping out, then so be it. Most of this stuff is voluntary. And the YouTube channel project itself is in hopes of making a little bit of money, because that's a big motivator. Online, the difficulties in any project, and this is true for just simple book clubs. People, no skin in the game, anonymous, flaky, inconsistent. So hopefully, if we're making at least a little bit of chump change, right, that would motivate people. So back to the process itself. We have video editors. The video editor, once the script is done, recorded, video editor combines the audio and the visuals, and then it's given to the person in charge of the YouTube channel itself. Hopefully, we could get some people as basically on the social media platforms, like someone on Twitter, someone on Gab, someone on Facebook, etc. But that's more for the long run. And that is, that's pretty much it for the entire scheme of the YouTube channel.
Right. And this just might be a personality thing on my side of things, but I've moderated servers before, and that's just moderation. Trying to get them to focus or do anything. It's like herding cats. So what you're describing to me here is a very large cat city and trying to herd it all together. So that brings up a lot of questions of what kind of problems do you run into? I mean, first and foremost here, what I can imagine is just retention rate on the reading and actually participating into it, let alone people consistently, especially on a volunteer basis, doing stuff like editing, the recording, and actually generating the material itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just for someone interested in doing a book club, it really is. It's just retention is definitely the biggest thing. Is turnout. What a very simple remedy is to just read books that aren't that long. Read something like The Abolition of Man, below 100 pages, so that you could finish it in one or two discussions. Now, the actual strategies for someone who wants to lead a group discussion, what you should be doing is maybe not literally keeping accounts, like writing down people's names, but you want people to talk at an equal rate. You want everyone to voice their opinions equally. That's that gives people, people want to be heard. They want their ideas to be heard by other people. You should keep that in mind. Try and keep it equal. Try not to interrupt people. That's just a turn off. Criticisms have to be open, and I mean criticisms. It's issues within the like proper discussion, right. So you want to try and alleviate those as soon as possible, as open as possible, as non-judgmental as possible. And another tip, I mean, try always to frame what you're doing, the activity that you're doing, that it's meaningful, right? It's something bigger than the individuals themselves. Being able to write scripts and make videos, that is something beyond the reading group itself. But even if you're not doing that, if you're just doing a normal reading group, always reinforce it, remind them that this is for their own intellectual betterment. This is for them to be cultured. This is for them to be able to be interesting if they're going to have a conversation with someone, like anyone, small talk, and just learning new things. All those things are very important to emphasize. Just make it worthwhile. And like I said, establish the technical term is psychological safety. Allow everyone to speak, don't interrupt, resolve problems immediately.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then we can sort of segue, because what you're touching on here is developing a kind of intrinsic motivation in the people, saying you're doing this for your own betterment. This is to make you more intelligent, know what you're talking about, be cultured, etc., etc., etc. To give them, it's not like, come here, I'll give you the money. That's extrinsic. You're trying to make them self-motivated to continue coming and engaging. And this kind of segues into another thing that you're doing on your own private server that you mentioned in your little essay, forcing people into a habit of self-development or self-improvement, where you made everyone, I think if I'm remembering it properly, submit a schedule that was going to incorporate not just reading and studying or things on that end of things, but also physical exercise or like some sort of regiment. And that was something that was required of people. Otherwise, they were just removed, basically taken as being not serious and just gotten rid of.
Yeah. I mean, that's so you're pretty much correct. It was just to write down a to-do list. I like to do it like around 2 weeks, because that's not too short, that's not too long. And if it's a habit that you want to do more, you could rectify it, change it every 2 weeks, experiment. But yeah, I mean, it was basically that does 3 different things. That selects for people who are looking at notifications, because what I did was I gave everyone a tag, a pingable tag for Discord, and I set up a distinct channel. I basically 5 days before I did the purge, I just spammed the tag once every single day to remind people. If you're not looking at server notifications, then my server, we don't even talk too much. We don't just randomly post. It's dedicated for community activities. If you can't look at the notifications, then why are you even in there? The second part is I want people to to be like well-adjusted human beings. If it were like real life, if I was doing a real life book club, I would make people do exercise. This is something, in Plato's Academy, they weren't just skinny nerds reading books. I mean, they did physical activity. That's something you need to do. But I can't really enforce that online. The next best thing is to do the tracking system. If you can't even do that, that takes 10 minutes. And it's not even something specific to like online activism or whatever. It's something completely general for your own well-being. If you can't even do that, then you're not serious whatsoever. The third thing it's good for is to get people towards removing anonymity. It's something very small, but it still gets you in the mindset to self-dox, right? I mean, because anonymity is horrible for consistency. I think you need some kind of skin in the game. Hopefully later on, as this thing evolves, we could establish things IRL, and people need to get used to this. I mean, there are some very paranoid people in our circles, and this is a small little nudge towards that. You're doxing your routines, right? I think that's very important.
Right. And I understand the kind of paranoia that you would get in, frankly, almost any circle, and I really think it is because people aren't that well adjusted. Like if you're fit, intelligent, and you keep your nose clean, there's not all that much to worry about. But it's this kind of, like we said before, anonymity, where you leave yourself open. It's like wearing a mask, things of that nature. So I'm actually very much interested in this idea of self-improvement, self-development, and getting people into a stable, well-adjusted place to be able to engage things. Because it's very hard to make this jump from being voices and text behind a screen doing something to trying to get people to listen to you in person. So this requires developing charm, speaking abilities, consistency, and rapport with other people. And these are things that you're just not going to be able to get in an anonymous kind of environment. It requires a lot of either natural ability where you already have it, or self-development to where you're able to then go out and engage. And a big part of this is especially the intellectual development side of things. It's very difficult to try and take someone seriously when they can't really either justify what they're saying, or if it's very ill-formed, there's very little structure to it, and they're almost kind of going off the cuff, trying to generate the concepts then and there, or they're going off of a feeling kind of things. Which is why I'm a big fan of the idea of book clubs. So let's segue into that a little bit and actually talk about the material itself. The paper that you gave me was talking about that it was a wider range of things. There's really no pedagogy to it. You're not going this very structured, we're going to go and enter this side of it and come out on the other side, and you're going to know all these different things. It's very free form, and you're kind of picking and choosing things as you go along. Like, I think it was something from anything from almost libertarian to monarchist. There's a wide spectrum of stuff that you're touching on and dealing with.
Yeah, that part of thing was definitely for if I was going to do a book club in real life, which I do try. I live in South Florida. It's not the most right-wing place ever, but I still do think that people here think like me. So, not even think like me, but just normal conservatives. And I do think we need to convert people like that. When the actual book club online, it's a relatively closed reactionary community. We don't need to talk about libertarian conservative stuff. We could go directly to the meat of things. Though I have been very introductory with the books I've selected. Like I had mentioned, we read Abolition of Man. We read Present Age by Kierkegaard. We haven't, we did read Patriarcha by Robert Filmer, so that's a proper reactionary text. We had read a couple of blogs, neo-reactionary blogs, and we're currently reading this paper compiled by he's a corporate account he's a consultant. He's a corporate consultant for like political struggles within corporations, and he wrote this very interesting 95-page paper, sociological paper, discussing the different dynamics of organization, all that stuff. So I think that's very, there's a lot of reactionary wisdom in that, and it's really interesting. But I had read out loud in voice chat the Maestra. It was the Considerations on France, or I forget exactly what the title is, but it's the one he talks about the French Revolution. But it wasn't an actual book club. It was just me reading the actual text on voice chat. And I had also read a blog about practical politics, about how the decentralized left in America have organized stuff. I talked to a smaller YouTuber, Clausington, and he even read the entire blog. He posted it as a audio blog on his YouTube. It's like an hour long. But yeah, that's am I missing anything? That's everything that we've covered.
Okay, over the entire book club.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not been running that long.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been running too long.
All right. So then, do you have any almost like set goal? Like, there's certain works that you absolutely must get to, or is it all just completely free flowing and you're just grabbing and picking things off the shelf as they appeal to you?
Right now, it's more or less that, especially if we're going to diversify the topics. I do want to give people autonomy. If you want to be a group leader, then go for it. Suggest a book. I think that's very important for like just developing leadership skills among other people. But I would like to have some kind of coherent, a more narrowed, focused reading list, right? Dedicated to a little bit more, reactionary politics in particular. But I mean, even me, right? I'm more focused on the management side, the organizational side. I'm not the most well versed in the literature itself. Mm-hmm. But that would be something I want to look into.
Yeah, no, you caught me kind of goofing off as I was streaming within Discord, going through the all but defunct wiki for Canis Society and going through I think it's the recommended reading, mostly being baffled at some of the selections there. And I did point out some things to you, and I hear you scribbling stuff down in the background, taking notes. So you're very, very diligent, I'll give you that, where you're coming into a guy half asleep, might as well be drunk, goofing off and still picking up stuff. So I'm perfectly happy to give you recommendations. I mean, I keep my running list of works that I want to try to cover myself and with other people. I might, say, screw it, you've already got an apparatus for doing this, and I might merge over, start doing things with you, since you've already got a base willing and able to deal with the literature. But now I kind of want to see if we can touch a little bit on just more broadly this idea of self-education and self-development, and the importance of that just broadly, let alone for anyone who wants to be a political activist.
Yeah, I mean, it's we live in a society. You have to interact with other people. You have to. I mean, you want to have a family. You're gonna have to know how to interact with women, how to raise your children, how to interact with the parents of your children, of your children's friends. You're gonna work. Most people aren't working by themselves, right? Most people aren't like solo contractors. They work in some small or big company. You're gonna have to deal with confrontational bosses, confrontational coworkers. You need to know how to deal with that. Exercise itself is very important. It increases your testosterone. It makes you more confident, and that's very important in your life. It gives you, I guess, exercise itself. It gives you a sense of respect for hardship, because doing the weights, right? That's very, very intensive, very, very hard. It gives you a sense of, I guess, perspective. And I think, I like to think of myself as someone who has at least a little bit of that. My dad, when I was like a kid, I helped him out. He's an electrician. I helped him out a lot. And I would like to say that gave me a little bit perspective and how hard life is. And so, life is hard. There's a lot of problems. You need to know how to fix it. And general self-improvement, I mean, that's the essence of it.
But then it's also this self-education as well, which is, I mean, we could dig up any number of the horrific statistics of the number of books people read in a year. It's basically zero. And especially for something where we are right now, you can get, and you can do this with pretty much everyone, so I don't think I'm being too harsh with it, but I will be honest, people I find in these circles are sometimes the most ill-educated on what they actually believe. You press them on it, and then it just bottoms out in pretty words, which is a problem. I mean, I like to complain about infotainment. People watch some videos or something. They're like YouTube rabbit holes exist. Let's just be honest here, and it goes for like left-wing people as well. Like someone just started watching ContraPoint, and it's aesthetics, veneer, yada yada yada. Now they're a leftist. You try to press them on anything, then it just bottoms out in I don't know. So it really causes for someone where it's fine if you want to just, okay, if it bottoms out with something that you don't know and you can't really fully justify it, okay, whatever. But at that point, it's time to stop talking. But if you want to be someone who's taken seriously, you actually got to put in that intellectual legwork, familiarize yourself not just with your own beliefs, but others. Because otherwise, what's the point in talking with other people, or especially debating them? Talk to them to actually understand them. But debating and dismissing ideas without having any background in what you're talking about, it's a good way to shoot yourself in the foot, because the one thing people don't like to happen is to be lied to. So if you're shown to be a fraud and kind of talking out of your ass, you're going to not just hurt your own reputation, but the reputation of anything in proximity to you. So that's going to be your, whatever it is you stand for. I mean, we've had this happen with politicians before, where if they're caught in a lie, it's going to ruin their the weight of their political statements. They're always going to be treated a little bit more skeptically. So then there's just another side of this where fast-paced, high-speed society makes the actual intellectual work quite difficult, where we're really habituated for this like bite-sized fast food kind of information. Everyone wants the pithy little audio clip. That's it. They don't really want to get engaged with it. So it's actually a very difficult task to be able to pull yourself away from all the dazzling lights and spectacle and actually sit down and really engage with the book, because you're the way that you're setting this up is it's not simply just here, read the book and then move on. It's actually sit down, engage, and talk about it. So you're properly reading the book where you're having a back and forth with it, you're butting your head against it, so to speak. It's not simply receptive, like, the stuff that we would have to do in high school, where it's read this chapter and then write a few words, and then the next day it's out of your head and you can't remember a thing about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, there really is, I mean, I was someone who did not read whatsoever until, I want to say 19, 20 years old. And I'm 22. And I've always had difficulty reading. It's just been, I mean, I've never practiced it, right? It's just, it's playing video games. And I mean, when you're, people's interaction with fiction is not books anymore. It's like TV shows. It's you just sit down. You don't have to imagine stuff. You could just look at it. It's the images are in front of you. And so, yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we need to improve. Mm-hmm. Another thing that you touched upon, like your reputation, stuff, things like that. That doesn't exist on the internet, and that's the really bad thing. I mean, you could just go to one of these like big mega political servers that there are on Discord, and you could get in a debate with a leftist, or a leftist could get in a debate with you, and you could just leave. You could just say, okay, okay, boomer. A cringe, whatever, mm-hmm. some dismissive attitude, and just leave, never talk to them ever again. And that's just not the real world. That you have to. That is on both an intellectual level and also on a just dealing with people level. Like I was talking about. I mean, you're gonna have to, if you work in a company, there's probably gonna be people who just get on your nerves, and you can't just okay boomer them. You have to like deal with them consistently throughout your life. And that's we have to work against that, and hopefully in this little project online, generally, I guess, generally we could, get people active, and coordinating in an actual project, doing things, deadlines, etc., expectations. Hopefully that ameliorates it as much as possible, but ultimately it has to be offline, and hopefully we can make the transition to that somehow. And yeah, I mean, one last thing on the self-teaching. It's oh yeah, no, definitely for the right wing. I think I think I really hold to this narrative for the normal, the conservative side of the right wing politics is very good at evangelizing, but they're not good at political activism. They read all the books, right? They have debates. That's what they do. But on the reactionary right, I think none is true. I mean, we really aren't very intellectually heavyweights for a lot of people. Like the lowest common denominator is, I mean, I know a lot of people who are just here because like I don't like homosexuals or something like that. Which, if it needs to be thicker than that.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm slightly terrified by is looking at not competing ideologies, but instead of these clusters, these social groups with just different veneers and aesthetics, and it doesn't bottom out on anything solid. There's no actual belief. It's all just reflexive, which is slightly terrifying, which is why I spend a lot of time looking into the postmodern condition, which is why I like Jameson or Nealon on that topic, and I'm getting a little bit into, what is it, Brauman? I always mispronounce the name, but that's sort of what fascinates me, where the political game, not even just political, the full game entirely, ethics, morality, all across the board, is now more emotive, it's more aesthetic, it's more of a feeling than anything. So trying to get people to sort of unplug, so to speak, from a world of images and start reverting back to a world of thought, a world of concepts where you actually think a thing, you don't merely feel it. A bit more adult versus the aesthetics of adolescence is what I'll call it. It's a little bit of a big concern of mine. So the idea of getting actual means of getting people educated on even just basics, being able to deal with basic objections and give a basic account of certain beliefs that are solid, that don't just bottom out in a throwing your arms up and go, well, it's just what I feel or something like that. Because I mean, I deal with catechesis, so there's always that worry of the world's going to hit you on your beliefs just by sheer existence. It's just the world we live in now. No one even has to argue with you. It's going to be called into question at some point. So I actually need to get you in a position where you're mentally formed to be able to deal with these things. And this isn't just a feeling anymore. This is something that is, no, it's solid and it's real now. I can touch it. I can grasp it. So that's itself a very big project that actually needs to be handled, where we can't simply rely on pithy YouTube videos anymore. If we want to be taken seriously, we have to behave and act like people who are serious, and that means actually putting your nose to the grindstone, digging your face into the book, and starting to get your head around certain things to where you're well educated enough to be taken seriously on just basic matters.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we need this project of mine. It's because we also need leaders, right? We can't just. I don't believe in this spontaneous order type of stuff. Just people are gonna educate themselves. I mean, they need guidance, and a big problem for more broadly, let's say, political activism on the right is that the people in positions of authority or power in the mainstream, they don't really give people opportunities. The only opportunities you see are like, campaigning, right? Become a campaigning or some kind of debate club in college. And it's not just about, even if people have the will, they need the opportunity. You need community leaders to offer that. And we need community leaders who are really dedicated, you and me, stuff like that. And hopefully this project could bring people together. And, that's part of the networking project as well. Hopefully, the ultimate goal for the networking project that I have is to connect all of the different communities in the distant right to hopefully coordinate something in the future. But I mean, definitely a side goal is to just find people with talent in that respect and give them a platform, so to speak. Give them a server with people who are willing to join reading groups and to just start one.
Yeah, you're creating an opportunity for people to rise up to the occasion, and people who are self-motivated to do it take it, and if they work out well, then well, you've just created another bigger player, so to speak, another, what is it, progressing your piece, to use the chess term. Right. So if there's nothing else that you really wanted to dig into with like more detail on it, I can let the chat start asking questions and let that run for a little while. Just chit chat.
Quick little thing.
Yeah.
I was talking to Duck. So Duck is the chief archivist for the Wikipedia, Canis wiki.
Yeah.
And I do want, aside from writing down intellectual figures, for the sake of networking, I would like to just have these different YouTube personalities. Whether or not we agree that I don't agree with consuming all of these YouTube videos, but these people are still in our community, and I mean, hopefully we could nudge them to be more serious, more productive, and not that I mean, Discord, like podcast, this casual discussions. I mean, we're having one, but it gets oversaturated sometimes, and I mean, these people have talent. They have speaking talent. They have experience writing scripts, communicating with people, networking to their own degree, and stuff like that would be very useful. So I do want to add them in, add a community tab or community section, whatever the technical term is, in the wiki for stuff like that.
Yeah, no, you can totally get in touch with Duck with that, and then sort of to, I guess put a pin into that. I do agree with you as well. It's my problem is more with a kind of you could broadly chalk it up to infotainment in broad, where I'm applying this sort of this moaning and whinging about it across the board, where people are getting their history from historical fiction movies. They're getting their news from people like totally blank on the name because I don't watch TV anymore. Who is it? John Oliver, people like that. They get it through infotainment, and then people get the rest of their ideas from like YouTubers. So they have a place. They work as these megaphones, popularizers, agenda setters that help turn the mind towards different things. They'll bring up things that you probably weren't thinking about that day. That's basically what the news is. It will tell you that such and such happened with this politician, blah, 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 blah. Well, now you're thinking about it. It's brought to your attention. They can function like that. The difficult thing is when they start taking up everything, where now people who are pretty much beholden to the logic of entertainment are then also supposed to fill in the role of an intellectual. And those two things are gonna start conflicting. Where if you have to have a consistent upload schedule, have viewer retention, because that's basically your capital if you were a business. That's the stuff that you need is viewer retention, eyeballs to be able to keep going. Otherwise, there's just no point in doing it. Having that will conflict with substance and rigor, where it's more about getting something pretty out, something that's presentable versus something that has depth. So they have a place. It's just a difficulty where you need to start spreading out the workload a little bit and where people are going for certain things. So it's a much bigger conversation that needs to be had about, like I like to call it the tyranny of infotainment, or this kind of a cultural or social ADHDifying of human beings. It's a big problem. A lot of stuff to unwind there. And shove it for a different day. But anyways, I'm gonna peek over to see if we have questions in chat. Okay, we've only got a small viewership, so I'm gonna wait for the stream to catch up and see if we get questions rolling in. Otherwise, we can just have a little chit-chat about anything. Kill the time.
Yeah, for sure. One, just not to have a dead air. I'm waiting for people to have questions. But one thing I did forget to mention about tips that you could have for organizing anything really at that point. It's try to have defined roles and roles. Do not make stuff ambiguous. It's definitely a problem for me and for people that come from southern Italian cultures, to just like have a lot of stuff that's implied, but you really want to get everything completely cleared, because people just don't know what to do, and if you don't, so definitely a tip.
Yeah, a very basic organization. Like I learned that doing like minimum wage jobs. All of the trouble was who's supposed to be doing what. Every time there's a fight, something doesn't get done is because we weren't clear on who's doing what. So if you want a clean running machine, all the cogs need to know what they're doing and their place. So we do have a question, but it's one I sadly can't answer. I'm not familiar with it, but what do you guys think about programs like Online Great Books? So I'm going to quickly look that up to just get an idea of what it is.
It seems to be an online community for classical education. That is extremely interesting. I would like to contact them in the future, like I had said. Stuff like that's great. I mean, I don't know exactly what they're doing. They have blogs, they have podcasts. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Just the concept itself. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, just taking a peek at this from, I guess I'll have to look at it. Hold on a second. Sort of reminds me of, what's it called? The Great Courses, I believe. Which I do like. I like having the, what is it? Great ideas and great thinkers of history or the Western world. Something to the tune of that. I like playing that in the background, and I get to listen to, I don't know, what Hegel was on about, or some idea from Kant, and it's a professor talking about it, and I can have it running in the background as I'm working or doing other things. And it's very good to just get yourself familiarized with certain things, just to be able to recognize things, even if you don't have a very substantial understanding of it. It's at least the ability to recognize what the thing is. So this thing is, if it's someone going over the classics, very good, because it's something that I had to go, like, I'm college educated. We only picked up Plato once in a philosophy course, and it was, I think, the Apology. No, wait, it was the Apology and the Credo. But then that was it. Then we just moved on. So it's something that's lost a lot of attention, but there's also a lot of depth and engagement that you can get with it, even in like modern commentators. So this is something very, very important, and something that we should try to turn people's attentions to, because the dialogues they're great. They're eminently readable.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love Plato, but I mean, I haven't read too much. It's mostly secondary sources, but but yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I have a harebrained idea about. Okay, well, there's another question, so let's.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you considered offering some sort of badge or certificate of completion for your online education program book group?
That okay. You read my mind. Yes, exactly.
You're gonna get certified? Can I put it on a CV?
I mean, not my group, but I think that this is a very good thing for places like Online Great Books or any other of these. I mean, there are different organizations that do classical education at the children, right? Like from K to 12, and I would really like the broad reactionary community, everyone that has our general predisposition in America, nationwide. I would really like to do something similar to Moldbug's anti-versity stuff. If we could combine business, if we could have business alliance among different members, right? We start entrepreneurial projects, stuff like that. If we could do that and couple it with a quasi-centralized, or like just a collection of different institutions that do classical education or any other type of education similar to that, if they can provide, if they themselves could provide these certificates, right? And then we could enforce that the use of those certificates within, I'm thinking something like the Knights of Columbus, or like, the innocuous things that go on in Freemasons, right? Not the stuff, but not the bad stuff, but they have business connections, right? All of these little groups, right? I would really like to establish something like that, just business connection groups with reactionary people, and then filter new members through these homeschooling, classical educated certificates, stuff like that. That would be great. I think it's really something we need.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that I use on and off. EDX, might be familiar with it, where it's pretty much you can sign up for free and then take quote unquote classes for free. It's more or less already set up. You're not really in like Zoom lectures or anything like that. And you can take previous courses as well. But at the end of at least some of those, you can actually get a certificate, and one that's apparently worth something. I've never bothered trying to look in to see how effectual it is, but it is something that you can put on a resume or a CV or something like that. Like, you can go and learn Python through it, and then they will certify you with something that's actually credentialed, as far as I remember and as far as I looked into it. So then I could go into a company and say, here's my certificate saying I did blah, 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 linked to this institution, like to get their accreditations from actual colleges and universities. And then weirdly enough, to get like some, like, you get I took I forget what it was. I think it was like a history of Marxism course that's actually from a university in China, but done in English. So you get places all over the world. I think some from Oxford or Cambridge, a whole plethora of different places, but regardless. But at the end of the day, you basically complete the course, and then I think you have to pay some amount of money for them to actually, okay, now here's your certificate. You have to pay for the actual paper for it, but you can take the courses pretty much for free, just to like self-edify. Like, I was, because I'm crazy and eclectic, decided to take a course on Nietzsche in French. So reading Nietzsche's German through French back into English, like I said, I'm crazy. But what that is a kind of almost separate apparatus. It's not the same thing as just going to a certified university. They are certified universities, but it's almost this intermediary. We're actually doing it through a company that's hosting lectures and materials, and doing all the work is done internally, but are basically linked to these different institutions where they get those accreditations. Like the piece of paper they're going to end up giving you have weight because a university put their stamp on it. That's basically the gist of it. But it is operating as its almost private company. It's something separate. So what you're describing to me sounds very similar to that.
Yeah, it would be something like that. I mean, yeah, definitely. And the general people who are attracted to classical education, and I'm focusing there because that's really the things that I was looking at, just because I was more familiar with that stuff. But they are more, they tend to be conservative. They are, I would assume, more natural allies, and hopefully some people we could nudge a little bit more closer to our position. And even if not, we could be, we could get each other's back, right? I mean, we should develop these thicker community bonds, even outside of just the online this and right. We need to try and interface with society as a whole, and these are established institutions that we could work with, building from the ground up. I mean, EDX. I'm looking, skimmed a little bit through it. I mean, they have they have the logos of various universities. You know, we wouldn't be able to do something like that. We would have to piggyback on bigger institutions. And you know, I mean, I want to give these people a place in our broad movement, if we could say that's a thing, right? I mean, these are important people. These are thousands of families throughout the country, right? Who are conservative, Christian, and we should communicate with them and just work with them in this.
Let's see if anything else has come in. Okay, I'm gonna let it run for, I'm gonna say about 5 more minutes, and I think we'll close it up.
But yeah, as we wait on, I did contact Dave with this stuff, so we should be having.
Yeah, he passed something off to me and a few others, sort of similar in the vein that you're talking about. I'll talk about it off once we're off here.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just
because I don't know how much of it is open, but I got something that made me think of you. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and before anyone calls me out on it, on the stream, it's Ed from Ed, and Eddie, because that is your profile picture. I didn't do that to be mean.
Yeah, that is my profile picture. Very, very inspirational, man. Great episode.
Yeah, he's a modern Diogenes.
Indeed.
So, I got one from, let me see. Basketball. Seems like there are some institutions who've already done some of the groundwork here, such as OGB, Hillsdale, Claremont, Thomas Aquinas College, etc. Most of these I'm not actually familiar with. Thomas Aquinas College. I'm aware of, the Aquinas Institute, who performs things like this. And I know there's another one. I forget what it is. I think it's God Among Us is the name of it. I sat in on a Zoom lecture talking about foundations of Eastern spirituality held by an Eastern Catholic priest. Something like that. But the rest of these I'm not actually familiar with. But yeah, there are institutions out there that are already doing something like this. And this is sort of one of the, I mean, just to talk about myself a little bit, one of the things that this virus has brought to it is, like, previously I was looking at and worrying about the ideas of moving away from solid institutions of education like colleges and universities. You have to go there, sit in there, and then that's where you get your cred. You can do something like University of Phoenix and actually get credentialed, but it doesn't hold the same weight as waving around a piece of paper saying, I physically put my butt in the chair of Harvard. But now with this, people are starting to get a little bit more, or the possibility of it happening, are getting more acclimated to the idea of online computer education on a massive scale, and then having that hold more weight in the society, where the ability for parallel institutions to move away from like this large apparatus of universities and colleges, where something like EDX could start taking off, that opens up a bit of a possibility. So companies like that are focusing more on a much more dispersed, let's say, physical body, lack of a better term, they can very well be on the up and up, especially with just the costs of going to big name colleges and like these physical institutions, and as well as just the workload people are dealing with. It's very difficult for someone who's coming from even middle class families sometimes to be able to pick up, move to somewhere on occasions, to go and put their butt in a seat for who knows how many years, like 4 to maybe even 8 years at the most, of higher education. So we might be on the impetus of some educational, social, cultural, economic changes because of Well, obviously because of the virus, but in this specific domain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got anything on that? Or go to the next one? So, what is the biggest obstacle to networking the various dissident right communities? Are there enough unifying values and visions, or are there insurmountable differences of opinion?
There may be insurmountable differences in opinion. I don't think that's always true. That might be true with specific groups compared to each other, pitted against each other. But there would be, there's like a network, right? There's a network or like a gradient when it comes to communities where, the one all the way at the end of one value is very disconnected from the opposite in the dichotomy of whatever community embodies that. But there is a continuum there of very, differing communities in intensity on said specific value. What I will say, though, let's just assume the worst. Let's be conservative and just say that there are and that this is a big thing. I think that we should very much do a decentralized approach. I think we should be doing segregated different strategies. We should segregate the different communities, quote unquote. I mean, they're already self-segregating, but it needs to be coordinated at the leadership level. It's like a patchwork strategy. I mean, I'm thinking, right, if we're gonna be completely, let's say local politics, something like that. We should have these different communities operating on different counties. We shouldn't be like attacking each other at the same geographical location or the same jurisdiction. That's a better framework. We shouldn't be counter signaling each other constantly on Twitter or whatever and like fighting. Of course, there should be conversion attempts, missionary projects, stuff like that to convince each different group of their own beliefs. That's fine. There should be debates. That's fine. Constructive conversations, stuff like that. But I think we should just. I think the current situation is very pressing. I think this. I think it's really bad. The state of our society is really bad, and we shouldn't be focusing all of our efforts on conversion when we could just have separate, decentralized forms of attack. I do understand Dave's concern about not having a positive vision, and that's fragile. But if it's a decentralized strategy, if we agree as a broad alliance to work under different jurisdictions, then that shouldn't really. I don't think that would be a major problem, at least to the short to mid-term, maybe in the long term. But at that point, like, let's say 70 years. I mean, I don't even know what would happen there. And there would have to be continued effort at the top to keep the leaders of each group friendly to one another, to like not cannibalize ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I might be on the opposite end of this of that spectrum, where I'm not a fan of very vague, overly broad coalitions, because it's like, I don't know if I can come up with something funny to describe it. You can imagine it's like a costume party where the directions are very vague and everyone comes up dressed weird. You don't know who shows up, and those are people who are supposed to be walking shoulder and shoulder with you, and I just can't see myself doing that. Where anytime when someone uses these very broad terms like our values or our yada yada yada, it's like reactionary, these big words that I've never actually had formally defined in something strict down, like getting down to, okay, I know if someone tells me I'm Catholic, okay, that gives me a ballpark. There's something I can work with there. If someone says that they're a progressive Democrat, I got an idea. Reactionary, for some reason, seems to be the broadest, mean nothing term I have ever come across. It tells me next to nothing about you. And that's a little bit worrisome, where if someone says, hey, I'm X2, but if X is still fuzzy, and all of a sudden they start acting weird. They start doing weird stuff, and then you get this, one of your people did something dumb, and now I have to pay for it. I'm not a big fan of that. Especially if it's supposed to be linking people's real names to and their real livelihoods and their real families a part of. letting some schmuck do something stupid and have everyone else pay for it. Not a fan of that, so I'm one of the much more cautious and nervous of it. I like to get it down. Now, this is what it is, and if you're outside of it, you're gone. Simple as that. Go somewhere else. You're not going to get attacked, but you're not here. So I like being able to keep all the ducks in a row. I mean, I agree with the idea of if there's no reason to go after whatever group of people, whoever the hell they may be, don't do it. It's kind of pointless starting extra fires and fights when you don't need to. I find it very uninteresting because especially it always devolves into drama, these games of detraction and calumny, which I have no interest whatsoever in humoring in any way, shape, or form. Keep your nose clean and keep it in your lane and keep your mouth shut about other people. But very broad coalitions do make me very itchy, is a lack of a better term.
So I mean, so the big problem here is it's on quality control, or is it like the literal policy prescriptions of various different groups,
No,
or you wouldn't?
It's not even policy control. It's being able to map out, like, you can say reactionary, and there is a very general, broad understanding of that, where it basically means you believe we need to go back to something. We've lost something, and there's some sort of political or social or cultural reversion that's desired. So it's very broad. It's never specific on what that might be. It can be as simple as we need to go back to Christianity, or we need to go back to 1950s economic organization. It could be who knows what. So if it's that broad, then you can have any number of people come in and then just have so many different conflicting ideas and narratives, and then try to call that some cohesive whole. Doesn't really work out too much. So it's not even policy prescription, it's actually ideas of what it is we're after or what we're going for.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, I definitely understand that. I would say that just having a decentralized approach would be able to alleviate that, because you're not really, I mean, you're associating with them insofar as there is this, you cover my back, I cover your back. And like, let's just say media, like media coverage or something like that, like spin, whatever, popular narratives, something like that. Not, there's still like degrees of separation in actual, right, like politics, right, like on the ground type of politics. There's degrees of separation. Hopefully people would stick to their own geographical locations, and that would be the only way. It would have to, I mean, literally, I'm literally thinking of like something like patchwork. And so yeah, and I mean, part of that, this is where the institution, the education stuff, the classical education thing gets in, or at the very least there is this more or less universal standard of culturing that you have to be a part of. That would be the main vetting. If we're talking about like 4 years down the line, that would be the vetting process. It'd be people certified in that. It'd be people who have contributed publicly to some kind of project or another. Let's say the group project of the YouTube stuff. If that becomes successful, people who work there, they would have some kind of reputation. There would be some kind, it's like you could put it on your resume for like when it comes to political activism, right? In the reactionaries. Yeah. So yeah, that would be my prescription to alleviate those issues.
Yeah, it's more of a structural issue to solve my worries, and I understand where you're coming from, but it's something that requires more time to iron out that we're not going to be able to solve tonight, obviously. Let's see. Okay, I'll give it just a tad bit more time before I pull the plug. Oh, and be sure to pass me off a link to your server, and I'll put it in the description. I'll have to go back and edit that because I screwed up my grammar.
For sure.
things have settled down, so I'm ready to pull the plug. All right.
All right, for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for coming and spending your time and putting up with my eclectic ass. We tried to set this up for how many weeks? I don't remember. And then ironing out the technical issues.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.